Let's begin as we do with a little song. Ya-ira, ya-da-da, yo. Ya-ira-ira-ira-ira-ira, ya-ira-ira. Ya-ira-ira-ira-ira-ira. Ya-ira-ira-ira-ira. Ya-ira-ira-ira, yo. Welcome, everybody. It's good to be here together. We're reaching the mid part of the week. And we explored yesterday this concept of thawing, the process of awakening, and how we can bring ourselves to presence in a gentle way. I want to zero in a little bit more even to the process of thawing or melting today, and to consider what happens as we thaw, how we feel our way forward or upward if we're sprouting from the earth. What happens as we move from the state of frozenness into a state of movement? I'm going to ask perhaps an unorthodox question in this space. I'm going to ask you to put something in the chat as we're learning. Maybe other teachers have done this as well, but this is my first time asking for some chat interaction. The question I have for you is, how do you know that spring has arrived? If you have that chat function handy and have a response to that question, could you share with us, how do you know that spring has arrived? The air feels a little different. Flowers are blooming. Birds, flowers, sprouting trees, buds on the trees, and birdsong. Oh, now it's coming fast and furious this spring. The weather is warmer. Exuberance. The light is different. When I awaken and hear birds outside, the crocuses come up out of the ground. Tiny shoots on the earth. Blossoms on trees, muscles unclenched. Beautiful, Lisa. The skies look different. I can smell a new start. The vernal equinox, more daylight. A tree outside my window is the first to show flowers. It's light later. Trees start to green. On and on and on. Thank you. Keep them coming. Without even reading all of the responses, I want to make an observation. Nobody said that we know it's spring because the news tells us that it's spring. Nobody said, I look in my inbox and there's an announcement. It's spring. Nobody even said they had to consult a calendar to find out that it's spring. We sense the arrival of the season. We engage our senses to explore the world as we emerge from winter. We literally sense that it's here in the sounds of the birds and in the smell of the air, the warmth. We see the light, we see the colors, we see the sprouts, we feel the exuberance of the season. For me, that sound of birds chirping in the morning as I wake up, the reminder that spring is so much noisier, so much more enlivened than the hushed tones of the winter, the snow absorbing so much of the sound. I love both the quiet of the winter and the chirpiness of the spring, not only because of how they make me feel, but because they're so contrasted from one another. And they inherently help me locate myself in time and in season. Next, I take note of what happens when I open my front door. Yesterday, I shared that I brace myself for the cold. As spring arrives, one day I brace myself and open the door, and I'm met with pleasantness. The temperature caresses the skin. And I, never one to turn away the feeling of delight, race to change into a t-shirt so I can maximize how much I can feel that warmth directly on my skin. There's a smell in the air. Some of you notice the freshness in the air, or maybe the smell of soil, of garden. There's a sense of collective freedom. Yes, it is the season of Passover, as Orly notes. It's also the season of spring break. And no matter how long I've been out of school, there is still a feeling in the air. I always note in Pittsburgh, where the winter is gray and long, on the first sunny, warm day of spring, it's as though the universities have stopped classes so that everyone can barbecue and turn on music and just appreciate the feeling of the air and the hope of what comes next. The air goes down easy in the nostrils. Could almost forget the harshness of breathing such cold air in winter. I've taken to wearing my COVID mask outside in the winter because it warms the air a little bit when I breathe in and out. What a relief it is to come into spring. And then, of course, there's the taste of spring. Seasonal veggies change, and I surrender my hot peppermint tea that I carry around with me all winter in exchange for cool water with a spritz of lemon or lime. That citrus, that freshness of spring. Meals become more leisurely. We might even eat outside. And of course, the sights change. Animals more active, sprouts and early blooms amidst the green grass. The gray sky gives way to blue, and the quality of the clouds change from long and dark to puffy and white, if they're there at all. I am delighted all at once by its familiarity, nearly forgotten in winter. And I'm grateful for my sensory memory that helps me remember the beauty of seasons past, the possibilities of what spring might hold. Now, I have to admit, as a person who lived in the Southern Hemisphere, I spent 13 years living in Australia, my sense of seasonal alignment became confused. Even after 13 years, I was constantly consulting the calendar to remember what month we were in, because the weather was telling a different story than the one that my being knows. And it wasn't helped by the fact that I would often hop on a plane for an adventure and arrive to an entirely different climate. For some years, I managed to avoid winter entirely. I would leave Australian winter, I'm going to put winter in air quotes, and come back here, where I would enjoy summer and get back just in time for Australian spring. It was nice to chase the sunshine, but it was disorienting. And over time, when people would ask me, what do I miss about America? I would tell them that I missed my friends, and that I missed decent tacos, and that I missed Trader Joe's. But more than anything, I missed my dad, and I missed the seasons. Needless to say, I returned. Here I am, where I get to enjoy the seasons again. And I had a great noticing. The pandemic stopped us in our tracks. Prior to the pandemic, I hadn't been anywhere for more than 10 weeks for 7 years. I was in constant motion. I would cross the ocean without thinking twice. And suddenly the world shrank. And just crossing the street to walk into the park felt like a big deal. At first, I feared that it would become mundane, looking at the same scenery day after day. And then something magical happened. We began to cover the same ground a few times each week. And then we would notice snow was beginning to melt. Then the snow was gone. And then a little sprout. And a few days later, a bud. And maybe a week later, a bloom. Stage by stage. Gardens that we had passed so many times without even noticing suddenly became a focus. So we tracked the growth of flowers and the sounds of birds and the change of temperature and so much more over that spring. And so this is our task for today. We're going to do the thing that we do each day at this time. But the invitation now is to engage the senses so that we can come into greater presence with where we are in this seasonal transition. Not yet fully in spring, mostly not still in winter. Somewhere in the gray area, or the less gray area, I should say, in between. We're in the space now of melting and noticing the emergence. And somehow with the noticing comes the gentleness and comes repacing ourselves so that we can be right where we are in each and every phase. Remembering that spring is not the destination, right? Spring is the experience. I remember when I was in school, spring, the arrival of spring meant that summer wasn't far off, the end of the school year. There was an end in sight. We just needed to go through the motions to get there. And these days I realize that with cycles of time, there is no end in sight. There's only the present moment and the experience of what is. So let's see if we can deepen into that. You may want to close your eyes. You may want to soften your gaze. You might recline. You might lean back, or you might sit up more straight. You might lie down. However you choose to posture yourself, see if you can allow a little more comfort in your body. See if a deep breath will allow your shoulders to settle, your neck to release. Release your belly. Release your glutes. Place your feet gently. As you breathe in, see if you can feel your rib cage expanding to accommodate for this breath. You might sigh as you let it out. As you breathe in, consider, what do you see, even if your eyes are closed? What color is on the inside of your eyelids? Or what color is the quality of your space? Perhaps there's a pattern or some movement behind the eyelids. Just notice what's there. What can you smell? Is there a scent in your space that's noticeable? Perhaps laundry, or the remnants of breakfast or lunch. How does the air feel as it enters into your nostrils? How does the air feel as it lands on your skin? What of the temperature? Is it comfortable? Is there discomfort? No need for it to change, just to notice. What can you taste? What's inside your mouth? Is it dry? Are you salivating? What can you hear? Perhaps a sound that's close, or perhaps a sound that's very far away. Just noticing the way that the senses engage. If your eyes are closed, your other senses might become more attuned. And the exercise now is not to change anything, not even necessarily to identify, but just to be with what is as it's arising, to notice and include it. And we'll sit now for about 18 minutes, just sitting gently and allowing ourselves to be. as we continue to breathe and be. If your mind has wandered, just gently draw it back to the breath, back to the senses, allowing your being to know where you are, when you are, allowing everything to just settle as we continue to sit. As we begin to come back into this space, see if you can allow yourself to emerge gently, opening your eyes and letting them adjust to the light, continuing to breathe a gentle pace, taking in the sounds, smells. Bring ourselves back together. Welcome back, everybody. We will have some time for discussion and Q&A, but first we'll pause. We'll pause to say words of Mourner's Kaddish.
Thank you so much, Keshira. Seal the practice as we do each day by offering those of you who are in mourning or observing a yard site, or if it's your practice to join in the Mourner's Kaddish, to do so. If you're not reciting Kaddish, just to stay with that beautiful practice, stay present, and offer your kind, loving support for those who are. If you're reciting Kaddish, you're invited to share the name or names of those you're honoring today in the chat box, either now or after we recite the Kaddish. And if you are doing so, I invite you to join me by rising in body or in spirit to recite the words together. And thanks to Kat Esposito for sharing the words on the screen. And you can unmute at this time if you're reciting Kaddish. Yid Gadal, Kadash Shemidava, Amad Dibra Chirute, V'yamlich Malchut, Chayechon, V'yamlichon, V'chaye D'chol Beit Yisrael, Agal, Am, Kavod, Kariv, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba, Barach, Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yishtar, V'yamam, V'yameh, Yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitaleh.
Elam Kodir Chatan Shirata, Yitzchata V'nechemata Da'amiram Yama V'imru. Amen. Shmei Rabban V'rach Elam Lem.
Shlama Rabba Shemaya B'chaim Aleinu
Shlama Rabba
Amen.
Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael
Oseh
V'imru.
Shalom
Amen.
V'yamav.
Oseh Shalom V'mamav, Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Al Kol Yoshvei Tevel Naru.
Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. Another really very special day of practice with our teacher this week, Kohenet Keshira haLev Fife. And of course, you're welcome, encouraged to stay on if you can, and welcome to use the time, the next 15 minutes or so, just to stay with that practice if you'd like. No rush to leave. And you can use this time, space, and community to support you in your practice. If you'd like to share reflections on your experience today, you're welcome to do that in the chat box. And also, you're welcome to raise a question about Keshira's teaching today, and I'll try to relay that in the conversation with her. So feel free to do that. Of course, as always, every day, I want to thank Kat Esposito for holding this tech space, this Mishkan sanctuary of ours so beautifully. And invite Keshira, invite you to come in. Here we go. And I'm going to keep an eye on the chat to, and if you do have a question, have you written any books, Keshira?
Not yet.
Not yet, not yet, not yet. That's a good answer.
I love the question though.
Right. So I'm just really loving this theme. And it's occurring to me that it's such a, it's a really prevalent theme in mythic literature and in fairy tales too, right? There's always, characters who are frozen and then kind of woken up by love, right? Not to get too trite about it, but for those fans of Frozen, that's the whole story right there. Spoiler alert. that what it really points up is the essence of the practice, which is attention, awareness plus love, right? And I just want to appreciate, not just the substance of your teaching, but your presence, which really exudes both of those things. And I think is what makes this so powerful, and which really distinguishes really, wonderful teachers of what we call practice, Jewish mindfulness practice, is a sense of that it has to emanate from love. So there's a question in there somewhere. I guess I want to invite you to talk about a little bit about the role of love in this kind of defrosting, thawing out process.
What a beautiful question. What's coming to me, and I'm almost positive I've shared it in this forum before, so forgive me if you've heard it already. I'm thinking about the way that the seasons, as I said before, they're not destinational. And so with each season comes an arrival and the delight of the arrival, and also an awareness of its ending. The story that I shared once here was about this corridor of gorgeous trees that would turn salmon and crimson and ochre in autumn. And as a high schooler, I have a distinct memory of driving in this road every day on the way home from school. I was listening to a lot of Simon and Garfunkel in those days. And there was what I understand is called nostalgia. It's the knowing that there will be nostalgia eventually for something that's happening now. And I could feel in that time the beauty.
Nostalgia?
Nostalgia, yes. The beauty was so vibrant, and my love for the aliveness of the seasons, for the earth, for the very experience of the sensation of aliveness, bordered on heartbreak, was how much fullness there was in my heart. And it could have easily collapsed into a depression, in the awareness that it would come to an end. And by the grace of Goddess, it burst into a deeper appreciation for the nowness because of the knowing that it would end eventually. So I don't know if that is a direct answer, but only to say that there's love in there somewhere, and that sometimes the love is romantic love, and sometimes it's platonic love, and sometimes it's just the life force love of our being on the planet right now with each other, with all the wonder and all the heartbreak, and all the connection that's woven in between.
Yeah. Love that. Nostalgia.
Yeah, right?
Great. That's great. That's also making me think about, the arc of this period, again, a little bit of future tripping here, looking ahead to Passover, and Shir HaShirim, the role of Song of Songs, right, at the Seder and in that period, and thinking about how that thread of love runs through the whole season, as a process of waking up through love. I know our friend and teacher Shefa Gold is here today. Also, of course, this is right. This is basically Shefa's Torah, which she's bringing forward, especially lifting up the theme of love in Shir HaShirim. And there was a question that came up that I think maybe this could apply to, from Karen, who wrote, I love winter when my mood is better than anyone around me. I will say, dislike spring and summer because of the heat and surrounded by tigers. I don't know what tigers are. How can mindfulness help to adjust being out of step in the world? I guess that, when you were talking about going back and forth between the southern and northern hemispheres, that also, I wondered about that too.
Yes. Karen, I'm right there with you. This hibernation of going inward feels like such a safe, ensconced coziness to me. I hesitate to go out into the busyness of the world. And I have found myself just noticing the ways that I've experienced life differently over these last couple of years. I would hear people talk about wanting to be back out in the hustle and bustle and wanting the entire opposite. So I can identify very much with what you're expressing. I'll share with you that my dad died on the 3rd of Elul, 30th of August last year. And I went into a deep hibernation in the time of Shloshim. And when I emerged, the air was cold, and by all accounts, winter was here. However, I had been sitting by his bedside in hospice for 2 months, and I had therefore left off in summer, and I was not prepared. In fact, at some point in the middle of the winter, my husband said to me, "Where is your coat?" And I said, "Oh, I'm not participating this year. I'm not participating this year." I was refusing to move on into winter because my summer and autumn were interrupted, not without good reason, but my being was not ready yet to move on into winter. I did give in a little bit in those few very, very cold days. I have otherwise not been wearing my coat this winter, perhaps in protest. And perhaps just to let myself notice the ways that I'm out of step with the world, as you say, Karen. And so the role of mindfulness is not necessarily to notice that we're out of step and to yank ourselves back into step or back into alignment, but to notice where we are and allow gentleness. Allow ourselves to be where we are, how we are, with whatever is arising, and to remember that everything changes. The snow will melt, the leaves will fall, the earth knows. It reminds us each and every day about the fundamental nature of change. And so in some ways, we don't have to worry too much about being out of alignment. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic, I was run off my feet in Zoom land. And my godmother said, "I'm so bored. Time is crawling." And I said to her, "How could time be crawling? I don't have enough of it." And wouldn't you know it, at 5:30 on Friday afternoon, we lit those Shabbat candles at the same time. Time will realign us if we allow it to. Our job is to be present with what is, to notice and to include, and to stay present, and to know that the alignment will come in right time.
That is really beautifully put, and I think it just underscores, I think, what you were teaching about, I guess, bearing witness without becoming attached to what it is that we're witnessing. Allowing it to be as it is, and noticing when we have the inclination to grab it, to hold on to it. To take a picture of it, right? I guess that's we are so, our cameras are so omnipresent now, right? It's like, talk about it being countercultural, to let the moment go without capturing it and let it go, noticing the anxiety of, but I won't, but I won't have it,
I would venture that your experience, uninterrupted by the need to take a photo, you'll have it for longer. I encourage my Bar Mitzvah kids, after they've read from Torah, to take an embodied snapshot of the feeling of the moment. What the photographer won't capture. We can take a picture with our senses and with our being in order to imprint something and then let it move on.
Yeah. So with this practice this week, where like day by day, you're taking us through a different step or a different stage of the process. We started off basically, frozen solid, right? And today, beginning to notice that, the softening that allows for the sprouting, something new to be coming up. Anything you want to add to that, like where we are today? Because we're going to have to let that go. It's going to be different tomorrow.
It's true. It's going to be different tomorrow. New things are going to arise tomorrow. But I think it's rare to kind of be in this process of melting or of freezing, and to actually stop and to take that embodied snapshot, to register, where am I in this process and what's arising, and not to discount it just because it's fleeting.
Right. it's not linear either. I mean, we
Mm-mm.
might be totally feel frozen on Thursday, So here's the other question I want to invite. This is I don't know if it's a tricky question or not, but the metaphor of frozenness is not one, I guess, that comes up that often in Jewish tradition, like I can think of. Right? We have mostly, like, I think, constriction, mitzrayim, tightness, right? And often in practice, people are invited to notice constriction, notice tension, right? So this is just like another metaphor for using this, like to notice where we are frozen. So I don't know. I guess wanted to invite you to, if you have anything to say about that, if they're basically the same thing, or do you think that this metaphor gives us, another element that maybe, because I'm so used to thinking about, oh, my neck is tight, my shoulders tight, my stomach, my chest is tight.
Yes.
And I can notice that in my body. I have not often been invited to notice, the frozenness, the thought, to thaw out, as you did on Monday so beautifully, by noticing kind of this internal warmth that is present, always present.
Yes. The metaphors of constriction, of tightening, of hardening seem to have some element of will attached to them, and that we set an intention and that we actively work to loosen or to soften. And I like that with frozenness, there's something that's beyond us. There's something elemental that's asking us to set the intention, perhaps to allow. So it's like an active passiveness, if that makes any sense. It's asking us to allow what will be to be, to not be in resistance to that which is futile. You can try to stay frozen if you want, but when it's 80 degrees outside, it might be a challenge. And so there's something of, can we move with grace, even that which we're not ready for? I also am not a big fan of the heat and humidity. I'm happy in this shoulder season, to allow ourselves to just notice, and to notice what arises for us, to be with it, to interrogate it, to examine it, and to love ourselves anyway.
Shefa sent me a message, I think it came just to me, that frozenness expresses the shadow of numbness, which is, I think, really very insightful. It gives us an awareness of an acknowledgement of numbness, right? Which is, I think, not something that we often do acknowledge. Feeling numb, because we think we should be able to. I should know how I feel. I should be able to identify these things, and numbness is part of the spectrum as well. And this gives us a practice tool for working with that. So, thank you for that. And Keshira, I want to maybe, if you don't mind, why don't we? I love beginning with the nigun. And I think maybe if we can end with the same nigun, or unless you have something else, take us out. It's kind of like, I think of it as like the bisamim, the spices of Havdalah that helps us bring the practice out into the rest of today.
May it be so. This is the nigun was Ali Halpert's Ashrei. I've just put in the chat. And I'll look forward to seeing you all again tomorrow. Yai da da da, yai da da yo. Ay 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 da da ay da da. Ay ay da da da. Ay da 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 da. Ya da 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 yo. Blessings into your day.
Thank you so much, Keshira. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks, Kat. Hope to see you all tomorrow to continue this beautiful week of practice with Kohenet Keshira. Be well, everyone. Many blessings.